Thank you. I'm Shelley Rogers. I'm with Granite Wellness Centers, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to this session of the Recovery and Wellness Series. Granite Wellness started the Recovery and Wellness Series several years ago as a way to share important information with the communities we serve. And tonight, we have some very important information to share and some very special guests. I have had the opportunity to get to know Laura and Chris over the past year, following the loss of their son, Zachary, from fentanyl poisoning. I feel like I've gotten to know their beautiful boy through the many times that they share their story. And I'm so grateful for them to be able to, through their pain and the struggle that their family goes through this loss, be able to share this information and your story to help others. So I'm gonna introduce Laura and Chris Didier. And I do want to mention that at the end of the presentation, we will reserve time to answer any questions. There's a question and answer box that you can post your questions, and we will try to get to them all at the end of the session. So thank you all and welcome, Chris and Laura. We're so grateful to have you this evening.
Thank you, Shelley. I can't thank Granite Wellness Centers enough for all of the support that they have given us since we went public with the tragic loss of our son, and helping us to amplify this message and really spread awareness in the community. It's a true partnership that we've developed here, and I just want to start out with that with gratitude and thanks. Tragically, we are here to put a face to the fentanyl epidemic that's ravaging our area, our country. This is our beautiful son, Zach. And this picture was part of his senior portrait package that he did just a couple of months before we lost him. He was a 17-year-old high school senior at Whitney High School, just with a big, beautiful future. He loved life. He was an athlete. He was he starred in the school musical. He was a straight A student. He had just completed his applications for college. I know Chris wants to share about our beautiful child as well.
Thanks, Laura. And again, thanks, Shelley and Granite Wellness and all of the other supporters of our advocacy, standing in solidarity with us. As Laura said, Zach is an incredible child to our family. He was an unrepeatable miracle for us. He was so successful in so many things in his life. It didn't make sense. How could someone just be a victim of a drug-related death? And it really just made us realize that there are no one is immune from this. We're all vulnerable, whether you're young or old, whether you're rich or poor, your socioeconomic class, your academic successes or struggles. Everyone is susceptible of being deceived. And right now, there is a tremendous deception going on that involves a product that could be very easily it could be lethal. So what we would like to do is share a presentation. And I'm going to go ahead and screen share, see if this works. Okay, so Laura, is the title slide up?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for those here, thanks again for attending and joining and listening in. We hope that this message comes across to you clearly and loudly. If you are parents of young adults or know people who have young adults or young children who are in middle school or high school or college. It's really important to get this message to them because they're the most impacted demographic. Laura and I are here to share this, and we're excited to work with the various coalitions to help us send our message. To illustrate kind of where we're going, one of the biggest challenges in our advocacy is the stigma that comes with our message, because when people have very little familiarity or experience with fentanyl, and they hear fentanyl and overdose and death on the news, they tend to compartmentalize and not really understand what's really happening. This is not the traditional drug problem. A few months before Zach died, he made this movie. As Laura mentioned, he was a very accomplished student, and he was a self-taught musician. He learned to play 4 instruments, but his favorite was in piano. And that's our beloved dog, Jake. Laura found this on Zach's phone only a few days after his passing, and none of us had seen it yet. And we wanted to start with this video. I'd like to also just kind of add, Jake is sitting here with me, and he may likely respond to this video like he does in the actual recording itself.
You ready? Me too.
So as Chris mentioned, we like to begin our presentation with this video of Zach, just because we really want to make him real for everyone. Just to see him alive, see how vibrant he was. This video really captures his personality, his spirit, his energy, his talent, his playfulness. And it was really a gift from him to find it on his phone just a few days after he passed away. His girlfriend thankfully knew his phone code, so she was able to get the phone open for us to be able to give it to the investigators, the county sheriff's office. And we were able to find this. Next slide. So what happened to this beautiful child? To say that we were blindsided when he died suddenly in his bedroom is an understatement. We did not see this coming in any way, shape, or form. He was so happy and he was doing really well, but it was COVID lockdowns. There was a lot of uncertainty. You know, he was a high school senior who was not being able to do any of his normal outlets and fun things and all the things you look forward to when you're a senior in high school. So he had just finished doing his applications just a couple weeks before for the University of California system. And it was 2 days after Christmas, and he purchased what he thought was a Percocet pill over social media on Snapchat. But instead, it was not a Percocet pill that he received. It was a counterfeit pill, completely fake, made to look like a Percocet pill. Some folks call that a Fentanyl. So shortly after he ingested this pill, after he'd gone to bed, said goodnight to his family and went to bed, he decided to take this pill. And because it contained fentanyl and a lethal amount of it, he never stood a chance. And within minutes of taking that pill, he was gone. And when we got the toxicology reports back, we found out that it was fentanyl that killed him, not Percocet. There was no Percocet in his system. And it was a real shock when it was Chris that found him in his room, sitting at his desk, just like he'd laid his head down on his desk and never woke up. When Chris had called for first responders, of course, attempts were made, but it was far too late to help Zach. So they had to call in the coroner's office, and it was the coroner that first said the word fentanyl was not a word I was familiar with at all. They searched his room and they searched him. He had no injury to his body. They ruled out self-harm immediately, but they couldn't find any evidence of drug use in his room. And he didn't have a history of that or any history with health problems. So it was a real mystery as to why he was gone. It wasn't a party death. It wasn't an overdose. He didn't take too much Percocet. He took one of what he thought was a Percocet, and he hadn't been struggling with addiction or anything where we might have known he could be at risk for this. So the bottom line is that when you go online, if you do not get a pill from a pharmacy or a doctor, there are these fake counterfeit prescription looking pills that have flooded the market. And you just need to assume that any pill that you get through a friend, a social media person that's selling pills, that it is one of these counterfeits that's stamped and made to look exactly like a real pill, that it will contain fentanyl, and that 40% of those street pills that are on the market, the DEA estimates, contains a lethal amount of fentanyl. In 2021, about this many people were killed by fentanyl that could fill SoFi Stadium. Was the opioid epidemic has really transformed into a fentanyl crisis. So this new narrative is what's happening. There are illicit drugs that are laced with fentanyl. You might hear about that in the heroin supply and cocaine, lacing marijuana with fentanyl. But with regard to these pills, they are purely counterfeit. They aren't prescription pills that are laced. They are 100% counterfeit pills. They're made to mimic a real pharmaceutical pill. Their intent is to deceive the user. Their intent is to get a user to consume fentanyl and hopefully become an addict and a repeat customer for them. So the new narrative and what we're trying to really get updated is that these types of death aren't a traditional overdose death. This isn't taking too much of a substance that you intended to consume. These are poisoning deaths where something extremely harmful and potentially lethal is being disguised into something else or laced into something else. And the end user is not aware that the fentanyl is there. And therefore they're consuming it without their knowledge or consent, and they're being poisoned, often to death. So the key distinctions here are deception and that there is an intention by the manufacturer, distributor, seller to deceive the end user.
You've heard about pills killing young people, right? A teenager takes what they thought was a prescription pill and never wakes up. We're not talking about a drug overdose, accidental or otherwise. We're talking about being fatally poisoned by a single pill, one that looks like a legit Xanax or Percocet or Oxycontin. Except these pills aren't legit. They're counterfeit, fake. They can kill you within minutes. And it's happening all around you. The fastest growing group of victims is young and inexperienced. They take pills for different reasons. Some of them are experimenting, others are stressed out and self-medicating. Many victims died at home in their beds after swallowing just one pill. Every young person is at risk. So what's going on? We live in a quick fix, pill popping culture, and we've been taught to trust prescription pills. In some cases, these medications are necessary, but they can also cause addiction. That's why we're in the midst of an opioid epidemic. So many people in the US became addicted to opioids that drug dealers started making fake pills to meet demand. The active ingredient of choice for these counterfeit pills? Fentanyl, a powerful synthetic opioid that's so potent it has to be highly regulated. There's no standard amount of fentanyl in these illegally made pills. They're not prescription medications. They're just thrown together in people's basements and garages with other cheap ingredients like filler powder, impressed into pill form. The dosage is never even. That's why they're so deadly. But fentanyl can be cheaply imported, and it's also highly addictive, which makes it ideal for creating fake pills. The drug cartels got involved too. They started to produce these counterfeit prescription pills containing fentanyl, known as fentapills, on a massive scale, flooding the US with millions of fakes dressed up to look like the real thing. You can't tell them apart. Authorities can't fix this or make it go away, but you don't have to be the next victim. If you don't know where your pills are coming from, don't take them. Don't believe sellers on Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, or any app. Don't believe friends who get pills from supposedly reliable dealers. Don't believe someone who says a pill has been tested. You may have heard of test strips that can detect fentanyl in illegally made drugs, but they're not reliable with pills, where fentanyl can be unevenly distributed. There's no way to figure out whether a pill contains fentanyl without grinding it up and dissolving it. In other words, destroying it. So if a drug comes to you in pill form, it hasn't been tested, period. And even if you test one pill in a batch, you have no way of knowing whether the other pills contain fentanyl. If it's not from a doctor or pharmacist, it's not legit. No random pills. Now you know the facts. Tell your friends, tell everyone you know. The more people who learn about fentanyls, the safer we're all going to be. You didn't create this problem, but you can be part of the solution. Help us spread the word. One pill can kill.
Bringing into some of the statistics that is reported by the CDC, this chart shows basically what's been going on in the last 20 years in our country, and it's focused on the age groups between 10 and 19. And it's pretty obvious, and what stands out is the yellow line that shows the sharp increase of fentanyl related deaths for 10 to 19-year-olds in the last few years. 2019 was a big spike. And it completely dwarfs all of the other drug types that are in white lines, such as meth, cocaine, heroin. So the the inflection point here of fentanyl is what's alarming, especially with the younger age groups. Bringing it closer to home, California is a border state, and it's a hotspot state compared to most other states in our country of fentanyl use and fentanyl-related deaths in our country. But comparing to Placer County, that's where we live. That's where Zach was living. There's even a sharper rise in activity. In neighboring counties, a lot of these drugs pour over into surrounding counties, and we're all at risk. This chart is rather telling to me. It's simply a growth rate of the number of deaths comparing 2015 to 2020. And as you can see in the white blocks there, most age groups have a fairly uniform growth rate in the number of deaths. That dashed line in the middle is basically just showing the average of about 6-fold increase in deaths due to fentanyl in 2020 as compared to 2015. But what's obvious standing out is the bar chart in yellow between the ages of 14 and 17. The growth rate has been over 14 times in the last 5 years, over 2 times greater than all the other age demographics. Why is that? Well, as the video you just watched said, it kind of talked about or touched on a couple influencers. And the first one that really stands out to us are the use of cell phones. Our youth have been around cell phones much of their lives. It was not the way I was when I was growing up and what most adults are familiar with. And that has influenced their decision-making and what they feel like they can trust. Young adults or young children who have extensive use of cell phones have learned to have these devices as a reliable and trusted resource. And they're obviously very popular. It's a way for them to solve their problems and find solutions. The other part is, and this was just touched on on the video you mentioned, are actual legitimate prescription pills. When I was in middle school or high school, prescription pills was not something that's nearly as common as it is today. Back then, maybe someone who was either elderly or someone who had a unique struggle coming out of surgery or a diagnosis that required them to have a prescription. But today, many of our young youth today have prescription pills, whether it is to help them manage anxiety, so to battle ADHD, or to help them with pain after coming out of surgery of some sort. These young adults see their siblings with prescription pills, their parents or grandparents or other relatives, their friends at school. And so when they see that it's been demonstrated having legitimate prescription pills that are much more normalized in society today as a default safe solution, and the accessibility of prescription pills through a cell phone makes a natural deduction that, well, maybe I can just self-medicate on my own using my cell phone to get a legitimate prescription pill. Unfortunately, with the deception of counterfeit pills, the reality is very different, and we're dealing with a very dangerous environment.
So our son, tragically, Zach, is a part of this new category of victim that did not used to die from drugs. It used to be that, we would teach our kids, make healthy choices, what you're eating, your diet and exercise, your friend groups, things like that. And if you could make those healthy choices, you could stay on a healthy path in life. And sometimes, young people, it's not uncommon to experiment, take some risks, push some boundaries. Sometimes those different choices can lead us toward an unhealthy or dangerous path. It might start with experimentation, just an initial curiosity, something like that, an experimentation, or maybe a self-medication situation. That could potentially turn into an occasional use situation, or using for recreation, just on an occasional basis. Unfortunately, for some people, you can become dependent. A habit can develop, and that can eventually lead into a substance use disorder. And on that path, the longer that might continue, if someone using and misusing drugs became dependent, addicted, they might eventually pass away from an accidental overdose of their drug. But now with fentanyl, well, I should say prior, in that unhealthy path, you might have hopefully opportunities to stop that risky behavior, age out of it, maybe have an intervention with family and friends, get some kind of help and get recovery and rejoin a healthier path for your life. But now with fentanyl, and especially these counterfeit pills that are really being marketed to our young people, now we have the one pill can kill situation where very initial experimentation or self-medication can cause instant death. And that's why this demographic is the fastest growing group. They're younger, they're inexperienced, they might be trusting, as Chris mentioned, trusting of resources they find on social media, just not as, worldly. They probably have not used, opioids and have no tolerance for that in their body. And so that's why they are particularly vulnerable to this situation with these counterfeit pills. And unfortunately, as we so tragically found out, just barely dipping your toes into experimentation can be the last thing that you ever do. And you don't have a chance to learn from your mistake. And so it really is like a minefield out there. It's not this slippery slope that you just saw in that last slide. It's not that slippery slope where we as parents might have an opportunity to see red flags and say, my child's age group or my child's friend group is changing, or their grades are slipping, or gosh, their attitude is really getting sour, or they're really, isolating themselves in their room all the time. You may not have those opportunities to see those changes as you might have in the past.
One of the more common concerns that we're hearing every time we go to a different school or talk to a school district are vaping devices in schools. It's been something that's been on every educator and school district's minds for several years now. But recently, fentanyl has made a presence in vapes. And the first reported DEA bulletin on fentanyl and vapes was in September of 2019, when agents were doing an investigation of a fatality, and the roommate admitted that they had fentanyl in their vape tanks. And the DEA sent this bulletin out to all the other different field divisions throughout the US to say, hey, fentanyl looks like it's starting to make its presence in vape devices. There have been a number of different cases throughout our country in the last several months on this. Here are a few examples. At the end of November of last year in Madisonville, Tennessee, a vape device was found, and several people were treated for symptoms of exposure by being administered Narcan and were sent to the hospital. This vape was admitted to be in possession by a student. And when the sheriff investigated, they said that there was fentanyl in it. More recently, in late February, in Mifflin County High School in PA, Central PA, 3 vape pens were found that confirmed to have had fentanyl or heroin in it. So these are vape devices that are being adulterated with different types of drugs, more probably to test to see how it would work and what it would be like. They discovered these vape devices from responding to a student medical emergency at the school, and there's an investigation ongoing still. They're afraid that there may be several other vape devices that have been altered to try to contain these types of products. Okay, this is a really meaningful slide to me because it really, I think, shows the impact of how fentanyl has evolved over the last few years. This chart is simply a chart that shows a drug type involvement for all the different drugs and is sorted by age. This is reported by the CDC. And all that I'm showing you here is a chart that has an age group on the bottom row, ages between 1 and 80. And then a vertical row is a percentage. And as you can see, there's various types of drugs here. The peak here is showing the presence of heroin for roughly the 22 to 24-year-olds in over 40% of drug-related deaths. Obviously, you can see the presence of fentanyl in 2015, methamphetamines, cocaine, benzos, and prescription drugs. This was all in 2015. 5 years later, here's what's being reported. Fentanyl is completely taking over the illicit drug market. It is in most every type of drug or illicit drug product being provided or smuggled or marketed in society today. And the number one of the most common methods on getting these types of products is through social media applications. What's really sad here is the peak of the fentanyl curve. In about 80% of drug deaths that involve fentanyl are targeting that you can see right around the 17 to the mid 20-year-olds. Those are the biggest impact age groups. So clearly, fentanyl is changing everything.
So, what can we do about fentanyls? The problem is, they're everywhere. And they're here to stay. The authorities can't fix it or make them go away. And even worse, there's no way to test them. But there is a solution. If you don't know where your pills are coming from, don't take them. If someone on Instagram tells you they're selling legit oxy, don't believe them. If it's not coming from a doctor, it's not legit. It's as simple as that. Now, that's not to say that we don't all have real problems. Stress, anxiety, pain, they are real, but they can't be solved with fake pills. The best case scenario is you getting ripped off and taking a dud that doesn't do anything. Worst case, you'll be getting poisoned with a lethal dose. The best way we can deal with this is awareness. We need to talk about it and tell everyone we know. The more people who know about fentanyl pills, the safer we're all gonna be. It's a bit like how most people hadn't heard of roofies until we started talking about them. Now we protect our drinks in case they get spiked. It's the same kind of thing. People need to know fentanyl pills are out there and that they can kill you. So now it's up to us to let people know.
So just to expand on that, what can we do about this problem? Because as was mentioned, these pills have taken over everything. We just did another awareness event last night with the Sacramento County DA's office with DA Anne Marie Schubert, and a representative from the Sac County Crime Lab was there. It's very much echoes what's happening at the Placer County Crime Lab, where 99% of the pills that they confiscate in any kind, of situation, they are fentanyl. They're counterfeit pills, and they contain fentanyl. So it is just so important that we let our young people know that if they do need, that we talk about this, first of all, that we talk about what is out there, that we make sure that we educate them, what are plant-based drugs versus synthetic drugs, and why are synthetic drugs so deadly? Well, with plant-based drugs, you're limited to crops and farmers and land and irrigation and seasons. But synthetic drugs are made of chemicals in labs. That's what fentanyl is. So it can be made with an endless supply. You can access these chemicals and make as many pills. The supply is endless. So we really need to talk about it. We really need for our, especially our young people, to be aware that these are out there, to spread the word about it, that our young people know where their healthy resources are. If they are struggling with something, where they can go to talk about their stress, what kinds of healthy coping skills they can use, without necessarily needing medication, if that is best for them, therapy, other kinds of outlets. But it's very important that even if we don't see any red flags in our children, even if they seem like they're doing great, that we inform them about these counterfeit pills, that they understand, because it can be as simple as, our high school senior leaves for college and they're in their first final season of college, and someone says, "Oh, hey, do you want an Adderall? I know a guy that sells them on Snapchat if you need an Adderall to help you study for that final." And that could be a fatal decision. So it just can happen this quickly. And that's why it's just so important for our young people to understand that if they don't get a pill directly from a doctor or a pharmacy, that it is most likely fake and most likely contains fentanyl. And the DEA estimates that up to even actually a little bit more than 40% of all the pills they test contain a potentially lethal dose, especially for young people who haven't used opioids and have no tolerance. And we also like to remind our young people that if they see a friend in distress, and maybe they don't even know for sure if they might have gotten fentanyl, but if they are with a friend that they can't wake up, that seems to be in any kind of distress breathing, to call 911, that they are protected by Good Samaritan laws. It's very easy to either one think, oh, my friend will sleep it off. Like in our day, someone, might have gotten a hold of alcohol and they just could sleep it off and be okay in the morning. But if you even suspect at all that a friend or someone could have come in contact with fentanyl, they need to get immediate medical attention, and calling 911, you will be protected and in fact be a hero for saving someone's life.
I'd like to, before we jump into questions, Laura and I both have volunteered with a number of different nonprofits. I don't want to steal your thunder, Laura, but she works for Song for Charlie. I'm on the board of Stop the Void, or Victims of Illicit Drugs. We do a lot of work with the drug-induced homicide. We volunteered for and collaborate with most of them, the California Peace Coalition, and so on. As a parent and as healthcare providers, I'm assuming much of the audience is there. I really want to stress that the need for how to communicate with young adults. And the biggest thing, our biggest advice is to just have an open and honest conversation and express your concern. Like, holy cow, guys, this is not like any danger I've seen before. It wasn't like this when I was growing up, and it's scaring me. It's freaking me out right now. And I want you to know, because right now, your age demographic is the most impacted, and there are 191 deaths happening on average every single day in our country. And that death rate is climbing. It's a death rate of every 7.5 minutes. And so when a young adult thinks they're invincible, it won't happen to me, I can avoid that danger. These statistics are so overwhelming. I'm really concerned, and to ask, can you work in agreement with me to how do you manage it? How can you help your friends and whatnot? And I also recommend talking to the parents of your friends, your children's friends, and teachers and schools and whatnot. And as far as young adults out there, it's not their fault that this new danger is like this. This is very unfair to them, because in the past, if you tried alcohol because you're underage, or you tried a marijuana or something, you experimented, the worst thing could happen is a hangover, or you feel guilty the next day. But today, the reality is there's a 40+% chance from a counterfeit pill that you can just simply die, and lights are out, and you can't stop it. So it's important to communicate, I think. Laura, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, one question we always, that always comes up is, why would these people make pills with fentanyl if they know they could kill people? Well, the bottom line is they don't care. I mean, it's all economics. Fentanyl is so cheap for them. Making these counterfeit pills costs them pennies, and then they sell them, for $20 to $40, to kids and adults. So it's pure profit. And there's, been a big push in decades, the past few decades, to do a lot of decriminalization around drugs. And there's merit to that, for sure, especially people that are battling substance use disorder and just have, personal use amounts and things. But the problem is, we aren't there. There aren't really harsh consequences for people that are trafficking large amounts of fentanyl. And so it's just pure economics. They're going to they're going to pop out these pills. There's no quality control. No two pills are alike. They all contain inconsistent amounts of fentanyl. You might try one pill one time and you barely feel anything because that part of the batch didn't have a lot of fentanyl. And the next pill you try could contain enough fentanyl to kill 4 people. So it's really Russian roulette anytime that you try one. So, but we'd be happy to answer any questions. I hope that you found this informative. We hope that you'll have dialogues with everyone that really, because this does not discriminate by age demographic or gender or socioeconomic status or race or anything. We've come to know a lot of grieving families with very similar stories to ours from all across the country. We kind of find each other. We have support groups, in different Facebook groups and things like that. And there are a lot of us around the country, just like Chris and myself, trying to educate and spread awareness and really reduce and eliminate stigma, around these issues so that people can get the help that they need and the information that they need.
Thank you so very much, both Laura and Chris. One of the most powerful messages to get the word out here is your story and the way that you share. We do have some questions. I'm looking in the Q&A, and Tiffany is asking about awareness for schools and Narcan. And I know you guys can expand on this. I just want to say that I know that Chris and Laura both have been in so many schools throughout Placer County and beyond, talking with students and parents. And in fact, I was at a high school a week ago, and you had been there earlier in the school year, and the kids are still remembering and thinking about what you shared with them. So yeah.
Yeah, we've done a lot. As you mentioned, last year, we really still had to do a lot of them virtually or with small groups of students. Opened up a little bit more in the fall, but we've been in several high schools in Folsom and Folsom Middle School. We most recently were in El Dorado County. We've done a lot in Placer. We'll be at Roseville High School next Tuesday night. That will be a very comprehensive night. We'll also have the Placer County District Attorney there. Shelley, I believe you'll be there, right? You'll be at that as well. And we'll have actually multiple victim families that will be speaking that night as well, just to really illustrate how pervasive this problem is. We're working right now very closely with the Placer County DA's office to through the summer to really put together a comprehensive informational experience for students and parents that will be bringing into the schools, hopefully through large assemblies and that type of thing, now that we should hopefully be able to gather in larger groups and get in front of the students at campuses throughout Placer County.
Can I also add one other thing on that? Song for Charlie has been working with several school districts. Laura, I'm not sure if you go ahead and chime in here, but I'm going to do another screen share real quick. If you go to Song for Charlie's website and you their homepage, if you hover over middle school, high school toolkit, it talks about how to share this information to teachers and school districts so they can see there are resources here that provide classroom instruction materials, lesson materials. There's the Beaverton Fake and Fatal curricula for middle school and high school, and there's a mini course, and it includes a teacher guide. All of that is free with no restrictions, no copyrights. There's guides for student assemblies and teach or coaching. There's posters and flyers and whatnot. So for those who are active in their school or have a way to connect to their school district, this is a good starting point because there's a lot of very useful media here to help bring that awareness out.
Yeah, and would you mind going back to the Song for Charlie real quick, Chris, and go to where that video, I'd like to show people that first video that was about 4 minutes long about the fentanyl pills. If you want to find that and share it with anyone, what can you go back? So it was under Learn, Teach.
Oh, so you go
Under
learn
Teach
and video resources.
video resources, and it's this one down here called Fentanyls You Need to Know. So if you're looking to share this, or you have a young person that you want to show that to, that's where you can find that. There's a lot of great video resources on Song for Charlie that really illustrate the problem.
Mm-hmm. Good question, by the way.
Looks like a couple of people or someone has their hand raised still. Tiffany, yeah, Serenity, can she unmute and ask her question, or not sure how that works?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry. So I currently I'm actually an intern in a school district here in Auburn, and I'm moving on next year into a position as the school psychologist at one of the schools there. And I'm wondering how I would go about, I know I'm glad to see that resource that you just shared, which I will be sharing with the district to hopefully push for awareness, because I haven't seen anything pop up for parents, families, or students regarding this issue. And I just keep seeing, left and right on Facebook, another overdose, another overdose. So would that be the first step as far as bringing awareness? And also, how would we go about getting some kind of training, or like you, Laura, had talked about the assemblies and things like that for the schools, especially the middle school that we have here?
Yeah, well, definitely. You can reach out to us directly. We've got they've got all of our contact information. And then it is the Placer County DA's office that we're working with to put together that comprehensive informational, assemblies for kids, for parents. And we're looking to go to any and all schools with it. So you can reach out as well to the Placer County DA's office and identify that you're a school looking for this presentation, or contact us directly.
Okay. And when will that be available?
We will be putting it together pretty much through the summer. Obviously the school year the end of the school year kind of crept up on all of us. We've been
Right.
This last one that we're doing at Roseville High School will be the last one really that we were able to get in before the end of the school year. So it probably will kind of depend on when principals are ready. I know the beginning of the school year can be kind of hectic. So,
Okay.
I mean, we'll be ready to go as soon as schools are ready to have us.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm hoping to push, have some more conversations with the powers that be there to push for this, because I feel like it's really important. And one other quick question regarding Narcan. So I know I've seen previously with people in the community that have offered support and stuff to try and help with this epidemic or whatever you want to call it, had mentioned Narcan's basically available. Is that something, do you know that the schools would be able, I mean, is that something that they could have there, or is that something that maybe poses a legal risk, being that they're minors?
It's my understanding that schools do have Narcan on campuses. They're not distributing it to students, but so I don't know if it's in the nurse's office or where it is, but it's my understanding that schools have been trained and that they have Narcan on campuses.
Okay. And do you know who, because I've done several trainings over the last, I worked in the school district and then now I'm interning for a completely different position, but here in Auburn, and we do a lot of our training through PCOE for like restraints and things like that. And I have never seen that come up. So do you know if that's specific to like admin, or if maybe it's something that we haven't brought in that I might need to bring up as well?
Yeah, Tiffany, I put my email in the chat and I'd love to connect with you.
Okay.
To talk about Narcan and potentially helping to coordinate any trainings that you're doing moving forward.
So you're the S. Rogers at Granite Wellness, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, I've got that saved. Thank you guys so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Tiffany,
Yeah.
also, I think it would depend campus to campus, because I was actually pleasantly surprised. We did an awareness event for multiple middle schools in El Dorado County, and it was middle school age, but it was parents, and parents could bring their kids, and they actually, an organization had offered boxes of Narcan, and they gave Narcan out to the parents right there. So it probably will depend. I don't know if that needs to go through district administration or principals, or, if they're open to something like that, distributing to parents.
Okay. Yeah, and maybe I'll bring that up too when I speak with my boss. I figured this was perfect to get more information on how to move forward with reaching out to them to coordinate some kind of awareness and training. And because if it's, it's something that we obviously have going on in the area. So thank you guys. I really, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So I also put some links in the chat. The Song for Charlie, which is really an excellent resource, as you both illustrated on their website, just excellent resources to have these conversations with young people. And also the One Pill Can Kill Placer.com website is a new website with many resources. I also put the Nevada County Harm Reduction Coalition link for anyone in Nevada County looking to reach out for harm reduction resources. I know that they can be a resource. And then my email, please feel free to reach out to me if you have any other questions. You can reach out to me directly as well.
Shelley, I noticed in the Q&A box, someone anonymously asked if they can attend the Roseville event on the 31st. And I don't know if you were going to get to that, but that question disappeared. But all of the events that we've participated and presented has always been an open venue for the public. So
yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Chris. I saw that question and I typed an answer, so it moved to the answered category. And I asked the person to email me, and I will reach out to Lisa to get the invitation and share that. So yeah, absolutely. I'm sure you'd be welcome to attend that Roseville presentation. So please reach out to me and I'll get you the invitation. Let's see. Yeah, and we can, as a follow-up, because we have everyone's email address, we'll be sending out all of the links and websites that we're sharing here. Yeah, I just think that you do such a great job at, really painting the picture of what this is. It's a whole new landscape today. And I always also like to share with young people that there's really just no safe way to experiment right now. It's too dangerous. And yet, as Chris said, we just need to have real conversations with young people. Just be real. I like the way you gave your example. And I think that they're listening. I think that the information is getting out. I think you're making a huge difference. Like I said, when I went into schools last week or the week before, it made an impact on them, and they remember. I don't think any, yeah.
Yeah, and I think another thing to remind kids, because there is so much of that, you don't want to be a snitch or you don't want to get your friend in trouble type feeling that all, young people will have. And I think it's also very important to let them know, hey, this isn't tattling or telling on your friend. This is potentially saving their life. And to really, because we all care. Sometimes we care more about our friends than we care about ourselves, and if we can put it in kind of to those terms, like, hey, you guys should really look out for each other, because this is not just someone's going to get a bad headache, or this isn't, someone might eventually develop addiction. This is someone could try something one time and that's the last thing that they do. So I think it's, important to also, have them think about their safety, but also think about, being the safety of their friends too, and trying to spread awareness amongst each other.
Absolutely. And I also want to mention that, well, we're really trying to bring awareness about the danger, the real danger of poisonings, people not knowing that this is something that's there that can kill them. But there are also situations where people are struggling. And we want everyone to know that Granite Wellness Centers is a substance use treatment, prevention and treatment organization. So we have outpatient, inpatient, recovery residence programs. Child development things are opening up following the pandemic, and there's a whole host of supports and programs available to you at Granite Wellness Centers. So I'm going to put the website in chat, and feel free to reach out to me, my email. I am happy to make any kind of connection. And there is a lot of information about how to connect on our website as well.
Shelley, I have a question for you. Does the Granite Wellness Center distribute Narcan or fentanyl test strips?
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. I wanted to mention that. Yes, absolutely. Granite is a distributor for the community. So at any one of our sites, which is Grass Valley, Auburn, Lincoln, Roseville, Truckee, Kings Beach. So one can just call us at the locations, and they can actually just go by and pick up a kit for free. And there are instructions that come with it. It's typically a nasal spray. It's very easy to administer by just spraying in a nostril, but the instructions that come with it are a really helpful step-by-step instruction. So please feel free to reach out to Granite at any of our sites if you would like to access a kit to have on hand.
I would like to discuss a little bit expand on that a little bit more. I think that with Narcan and fentanyl test strips, it's important that it's also accompanied with an understanding of their limits and what they can do or can't do. Basically, an education for that. If someone consumes fentanyl and there's a lethal amount, they're very, very likely not going to be able to Narcan themselves because they get so tired so fast. And a symptom is they're just extremely sleepy, can't be awake, and they may snore really loud, and they're obtunded. And it's virtually impossible to Narcan yourself. So my concern, if 15, 17-year-olds are interested in experimenting or self-medicating and they think, well, I have our shield called the Narcan, especially if they're alone, that may not be a really reasonable, safe measure. I think Narcan, as one parent explains it, is like a way to deter death. It's like a one-time use fire extinguisher, but you may be in the middle of a raging forest fire, and that's not going to be enough. So as Laura mentioned already, the first thing is call 911. Hopefully a Narcan is nearby to try to mitigate the effects of the first few waves of fentanyl, but they need to be sent to the hospital. And then as far as the fentanyl test strip, the video we saw that was the explainer video saying there's no way to test them. I think there needs to be an explanation on that. I believe fentanyl test strips have evolved a lot in the last year. And I think it is possible to test them. And I think that's a great tool to have. However, it's not an all-inclusive system. Two parts to that discussion. One is the fentanyl test strip may not necessarily test every analog of fentanyl. There are many analogs of fentanyl, and going back to the chocolate chip effect, a chocolate chip cookie may have some chocolate chips on the right side and none on the left side. And like a pill, fentanyl may not be uniformly on a pill. Well, fentanyl test strip, I kind of think of it as like testing a certain type of fentanyl. So if you have chocolate chips that are milk chocolate, a fentanyl test strip might be able to detect milk chocolate chips, but not dark chocolate chips or the caramel chocolate chips or the peanut butter chocolate chips. There's so many different analogs, and they're continuing to evolve. And so if someone uses a fentanyl test strip, it's entirely possible that there may be fentanyl in there that test didn't detect, just because of the fentanyl test strip versus the fentanyl. And the other part to that is if they don't test it properly, they have to be very careful with how they use it, kind of like testing if you have COVID or a pregnancy test. If it's not done right, it may give you a false reading of a false negative when in fact there is presence of fentanyl. As it says, as little as 2 milligrams of fentanyl or 2 to 3 grains of salt is enough to be fatal. That's a really big risk. So I think education needs to come with Narcan and fentanyl test strips.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think especially for young people to know that absolutely, if you see something in pill form, it hasn't been tested. It has to be liquefied to be tested. So, for these young kids, if someone's saying, no, here's a pill and I already tested it, that's not true.
That's what our investigator for Zach's story, who's investigating the perpetrator who sold Zach. What he says a very common thing is they will have bags of prescription pills, and they'll say, hey, I've taken several of these pills, 2 or 3 of them, and I tested them completely. The pill dissolved the entire pill, and that pill had no fentanyl. But that's great. But what about the other 180 pills in that bag? You can't assume.
Every pill is totally unique.
Yeah, they're not uniform.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm so glad you expanded on to talk a little bit more about harm reduction. Definitely a good resource, but you need to be aware that there are limitations. There can be limitations.
Education is important.
And that education is important. Well, goodness, unfortunately, we're out of time. And but I want to thank you so very much for your time and for sharing your family's story with us and Zach's story, and so that other lives can be saved. And so we thank you very much. And
Thank you for having us here, Shelley. It's always good to work with you. You've been with us for such a long part of our journey, and it means a lot to have you stand in solidarity with us, you and the entire Granite Wellness Center and so many others. So thank
Yeah.
you.
We've been very blessed to be a part of Placer County. We talk with a lot of parents who have lost kids, and depending on, what state, what county, they're in, they may not receive this kind of support and amplification that we've gotten here in Placer when we decided that we wanted to go public and put a face to this crisis and help turn things around. We were met with just tremendous support from all agencies, and I'm pretty certain it was you guys, Granite Wellness, that we did our first town hall with, and it's just been a partnership that I think is just, really been beneficial.
yeah, well, thank you. Well, no, we are in this with you, and we gotta prevent this from happening to any more beautiful children or beautiful people. So yeah, thank you again, and we will continue. We will continue to get the word out there, and thank you to everybody that joined. So our ask to you is, please take this information and share it. Share it far and wide. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. We have these resources that we've shared tonight. We'll be sending out the links to the recorded session and the resources. And yeah, and thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone. Stay safe.
Good night.